Hello, everyone, and inside today's Locked On Canadiens, we have new lines after the All-Star break. And is Juraj Slafkovsky going to the Olympics? All that and more inside today's show.
You are Locked On Canadiens, your daily podcast on the Montreal Canadiens, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the latest episode of Locked On Canadiens. We are your daily Montreal Canadiens podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where you get your team every single day of the week, wherever you get your daily podcast, whether it be Google, Apple, Spotify, or if you're watching on youtube.com video as well. We thank you, as always, for subscribing. Tell all your friends, even if they're not Habs fans, if they just love hockey stuff. We have a show for everybody across the NHL. And today's episode is brought to you by Sleeper. Download the Sleeper app and use promo code LOCKEDONNHL to get a $100 match on your first deposit. Terms and conditions apply. See Sleeper's terms of use for details. But you're probably wondering, if you're new here, who the heck is this guy talking to me? I am your host. I am Scott Matla. My co-host will be back for tomorrow's show after the Canadiens Capitals game. But I am Scott Matla. I'm not going to say captaining this ship. I'm just kind of, taking it where the breeze takes me right now. And we've got a really fun show kind of packed up for you here. We have the Olympic news that was announced last week that we're going to talk a little bit about the Montreal Canadiens that might be available for that in 2026 in our second segment. We're going to talk about who needs to step up in the second half. We talked about some of the underrated prospects and who's been shining a little bit out of the spotlight on our Monday episode. I want to take a second part of that and see who's going to step up in the second half here. Can there be a good second half for some of these vets that maybe haven't been quite where they want to be yet overall? But we want to kick off the show with the biggest thing. Is we've talked a lot about what does this team look like with the Sean Monahan trade completed. Obviously, Monahan, again, went to Winnipeg for a first-round pick. You got 2 episodes kind of detailing that. We wondered, what are lines going to look like? The biggest news is that Alex Newhook is traveling with the team, but will not be available for the game against the Washington Capitals. It's a good sign that he's skating with the team regularly, but he is not in the lineup yet. He's not quite over that final hump yet. I think they said 10 to 12 weeks. I believe, if my rough math estimation is correct, it's about 9.5 weeks so far. So he's going to be a little ahead of schedule for that. So coming out of the All-Star break, we have lines at practice today, which, again, grain of salt with all of this. Things can change very quickly when teams are getting ready to, line up and everything after this. The lines at practice today: Caufield, Suzuki, Juraj Slafkovsky. Line 1. Love that. Don't change a thing. And these all come from Anthony Martineau on Twitter, and he says there may be changes. Don't bet your house on what this looks like right now, which is, I think, a very important step, because it is the rest of this lineup is so heavily preseason-esque that it might make your eyes hurt a little bit. Line 2, Pearson, Evans, Jesse Ylönen. Not ideal. Line, and this is where things kind of start to diverge a little bit and things get a little bit weird. Line 3, Lucas Condata, Brandon Gignac, Josh Anderson. Line 4, Rafael Harvey-Pinard, Michael Pezzetta, with an extra with a question mark put in there, and Yoel Armia. I don't know how I feel about all of that. That's just the forward pairings there from Anthony at TVA Sports. And my first thought is, why did we recall 2 centers, we being the Montreal Canadiens, if 2 of them are going to play on the same line? Anthony also says that he's expecting it to potentially go 11-7 tomorrow, but again, that he is not betting his house on that. My biggest thing is that I'm looking at this lineup right now. Top line, great. Leave that the way it is. We know that group works together. Line 2, Evans, Ylönen. I actually really kind of like that combination there. It adds some scoring punchiness. Ylönen's got the skill to play with Evans up there, and Evans has played, I think, with Jesse Ylönen a little bit, and I think that there is a lot to like there. Tanner Pearson, I don't think really fits that line all that much. Tanner Pearson, I think this is a guy they're going to see, okay, can we get any kind of points generated here? What can we get out of this and turn him into any kind of asset going into the trade deadline? Kandata, Gignac, Anderson is I don't even know. I am not sure of if Lucas Kandata is an NHL quality player or not. He's got, I think, 3 total games under his belt at this point. Brandon Gignac hasn't played in the NHL since his entry-level deal 4 years ago. And Josh Anderson, we know, has struggled to be a positive impact player on most of the lines he's been on this year. And then you have Harvey Pinard, Pizzetta, Armia, which just feels like a very weird amalgamation of a fourth line here, with Pizzetta as the extra forward potentially. My first thought is that I swap Harvey Pinard and Pearson, and I swap Kandata and Armia, and I go Gignac, Anderson, Armia, and then you have Kandata and Pearson as your extra forwards there. I think Gignac's speed and the fact that he is a more natural center kind of gives him a hand here. Overall, it's rough. It is rough looking. I am not expecting more news out of this. I'm not expecting there to be another recall or anything like that right now. I would be shocked if there is. I don't think they really need to do that as it stands right now. I'm curious to see how they shuffle out kind of the defensive alignment behind this, because that, as a forward core, is rough. It is not an ideal group going into a game against the Capitals. And here's the thing: is we knew the back half of the season is going to be rough. We absolutely knew that. The good news is that with Alex Newhook traveling with the team, he's likely ready. Hopefully, if I'm going to be generous in giving a time frame, to the end of the week here, and then, as rough as we know that's going to look, you have Alex Newhook as your other center, and then you have Gignac and Kandata as your extras. Michael Pizzetta likely is a healthy scratch in there somewhere, and it tends to take a little bit more shape. I don't want to judge this too harshly just because I don't know where Newhook is going to slot into this lineup yet. This is far from ideal in any circumstance. Is that I love Jake Evans. I think Jake Evans is a really solid bottom 6 pivot. You are asking him now to take on some of the best in the NHL. And yes, they are going to play Washington, who is on a down year. But this is a lineup that you look at that, and Alex Ovechkin is probably looking at and going, I'm going to break every possible slump that I am in right now. And that's okay. My only ask of this team is that there is effort in this. If you are trying to do things out there, that's great. I don't want this just become Suzuki has to do everything. That's how it's shaping up. The good news is that out of every opponent they could have faced is that the Capitals are a team that's always been the Canadiens' boogeyman for some reason, in that the Habs either play a nice, solid structured game and win, or they melt down in tremendous fashion. The Capitals have 51 points on the season. They are 22, 18, and 7, a minus 31 goal differential in 47 games. The Canadiens, who have played 2 more games, have a minus 39 goal differential. They are 20, 21, and 8. Both teams are 7th in their respective divisions. The Canadiens just ahead of Ottawa, Washington just ahead of Columbus. Sorry, Jay. Love you guys. I want to, let me take a look here. Evgeny Kuznetsov will not be in this game. It is announced that he had entered the NHL Player Assistance Program, which I am happy to see that players are taking that option and taking care of themselves. But when we compare these two teams here, the Canadiens look a little bit like an offensive juggernaut compared to the Capitals. The Capitals' leading scorer is Dylan Strome, who has 19 goals and 12 assists in 47 games for 31 points. Nick Suzuki has 42 points. Cole Caufield has 39. Matheson has 34. Slafkovsky has 20. The stunning part of this is that tied for second on this team is Alex Ovechkin, who only has 9 goals on the season, 31 points. He has 4 power play goals. Almost half of his goals are on the power play. If I sort the Canadiens by goals here, The Canadiens' goal scoring isn't much better. Caufield has 17, Suzuki has 13, Gallagher has 8, Armia has 8, Matheson has 7, Anderson has 7, Newhook has 7, Slafkovsky has 7. Jonathan Kovacevic has 6 goals on the season. It's shaping up to be a stoppable force meets a movable object kind of thing here. I am not anticipating this to be the greatest hockey game ever played, but we will find out very quickly if the rest did the Canadiens any good, or if it did Ovechkin any good since he didn't have to go to the All-Star game this year. We'll see what the lineups look like. Laura and I will have your recap after that game for whatever that may entail and so much more. However, we know the Olympics are coming back, and I really wanted to take a moment to kind of take a look and see who's going to be on some of those 2026 teams, and we're going to get into that coming up next. But first, it is the week of the Super Bowl. It is the best time to celebrate if you were like me and you were sat down on your couch with your favorite drinks, with your favorite snacks, and your favorite people. And now you can celebrate even more with FanDuel, America's #1 sports book right now. And if you've gone through the Parlay Hub to find the most popular parlays that people are playing, if you've explored the other bet tabs to find something that catches your eye, you're going to be able to apply all of that to the Super Bowl. How many times are they going to show Taylor Swift? How many times are they going to reference Mahomes and Kelsey passing Brady and Gronkowski? How many times are they going to talk about how the Bills and Josh Allen didn't beat the Chiefs again, and just making me next level sad? And you can do this all on an app that is safe, secure, and easy to use. And new customers today can get $200 in bonus bets if your first bet of $5 or more wins. Just visit FanDuel.com/locked on today. That's FanDuel.com/locked on to sign up. And remember, make every moment more with FanDuel, the official sportsbook partner of the NFL and us here at Locked On. We are back here at Locked On Canadiens. I am, of course, your host, Scott Matla, for the day. If my voice sounds a little scratchy, I am still sorry. I'm recovering from whatever illness I caught on my way back from a sales summit in Dallas, but I want to make sure that I got this next episode out. And I'm actually really excited about this because it's the first time we've been able to talk about this sincerely in quite a while, actually. The NHL is going back to the Olympics, and I wanted to talk about this as soon as possible. But the hardest part with this is that we had all the Monahan trade stuff that I think brought itself to the forefront here. So I wanted to make sure that I gave this the space that it actually deserved. The NHL is going back to the Olympics for at least 2026 and 2030. That was confirmed during the All-Star festivities this past weekend in Toronto. It is long overdue. People have been begging for this. The last Olympics that players went to was what, 2014, if I'm doing my math correctly here. I'm thrilled for this because people have been begging. They want to see the best in the world against the best in the world. We want to see Connor McDavid in the Olympics. We want to see some of the top American stars, Cole Caufield, make that Team USA. We want to see, Quinn Hughes and Jack Hughes in the Olympics. We want to see McDavid. We want to see Crosby get his last hurrah. And there's so much more to that. And I'm excited, just as a neutral hockey fan, that I get to watch Switzerland and Finland play, that Czechia and Slovakia are going to play games, that we're going to see potentially Germany or Switzerland, countries that have been on the rise with growing pools of players across hockey, not just the NHL. There is more out there. It's long overdue. I love World Juniors. I love the World Championships. This is kind of what we deserve here. And I thought I would take a moment here and kind of think, okay, who's a guaranteed lock to make the Olympics out of all the players? I'm looking at Team USA and I go, I don't think there's a lock there yet. We'll touch on that. Canada, I don't think there's a lock there yet. Sweden, I don't think so. Finland, Arturi Lehkonen is no longer a Montreal Canadian, so unfortunately not there. I'd be shocked if Joel Armia makes it. That would be actually quite funny if he did, and bless him, that'd be amazing if he did. But then I got to Slovakia, and that's kind of where my brain stopped, and I went, how did I skip over this so quickly? And the big thing for that is Juraj Slafkovsky rose to prominence playing in one of the COVID-era Olympics before players who had an NHL contract were not allowed to go. Hence why Sean Farrell went to the Olympic Games, and which is a wild thing to say out loud. But Juraj Slafkovsky was on that Slovak team where he scored 7 goals in the Olympic Games. Out of everybody in the Montreal Canadiens organization, Juraj Slafkovsky strikes me as one of the very few players I am confident to say that they would be a lock in making that team. Even if he is not a first-line star on that team, I have no doubt in my mind that Juraj Slafkovsky will be playing for Slovakia at the Olympics. And I think that's a huge deal. There's no all-star game. There's nothing else. That's a tremendous honor because he hasn't gotten to do the other World Juniors tournaments because he's been playing with the Canadiens. Maybe they should have let him go to the one last year, but we won't rehash that. This is a huge opportunity for him, especially if his trajectory keeps going upwards. And when he puts on that Slovak crest on his jersey, it seems to just unlock that next level of play for him. A lot like it did for Carey Price. Carey Price was great, but when Carey Price put on the maple leaf, he was undeniable, unstoppable, unbeatable. I'm not saying he's going to win Juraj Slafkovsky is going to win a gold medal, but the opportunity to see him for his country in that tournament, in this one, and probably in 2030 as well, as long as his progression continues, it's hard to not ignore that. And it's also wild to be thinking about a tournament that is 6 years away and realizing Slafkovsky will be right in his prime during that. For Slovakia on the other side, I look at this and go, I don't know if Filip Mesar is going to make that team. I would be thrilled if he did, because I do not believe he was on that Olympic team with Juraj Slafkovsky at the same time. I'm just double checking my stats on that. He was not. So he was not able to play on that same team as Juraj Slafkovsky. But I think because he'll be coming into the North American professional ranks full-time after this season. I think there's enough time for him to do enough damage at the AHL level and potentially making the NHL team to make that jump up there. As I kind of look through some of the other players here, Adam Engstrom, I think, is a long shot for Sweden just because of how stacked Sweden is, especially in the NHL, in the AHL, in the SHL. They have a lot of players there. Adam Engstrom's going to be in tough, especially being a younger guy. 2026, probably not. 2030, if he continues, potential long shot. Maybe that'll change. Things can change very quickly, obviously, in a couple of years. Team USA, I am stuck on 2 names for 2026 and 3 for 2030. 2026, Cole Caufield should make Team USA. Even if it as an extra forward that they use in certain situations, Team USA has this tremendous inability to avoid falling into a pitfall of small players aren't good for big tournaments like this. And my biggest fear with that is I don't think Lane Hutson will make the 2026 team just based on the fact he doesn't have the same professional experience. And the American Defensive Corps has guys like Charlie McAvoy in there. Adam Fox will be in there. Quinn Hughes will be in there, etc. There's a lot of good players already. But in 2030, Lane Hutson should be under every consideration for that, assuming he makes the transition to professional ranks as well. And who knows? Maybe he comes into the NHL next year, assuming he signs, and just lights it up and they go, we can't ignore this. He's Quinn Hughes part 2. We can't ignore him in this tournament and context. Great. Sign him up. In 2030, Connor Hellebuck will be likely at the end of his career. We don't know where Jeremy Swayman or whomever and Jake Ottinger will be at that point in their career, if they're still at the top of their game or not. I am curious to see if in 2030 Jacob Fowler is the guy. And yes, that is a huge, huge leap for me. He's in his freshman season at Boston College right now. But I look at that line of Smith and Perreault and Leonard and Cutter Gauthier and all those players there. That entire group, that includes Lane Hutson as part of that big USNTDP puzzle there is going to be the next future core of Team USA. And as for Team Canada, I look at it right now. Matheson's got to be a long shot, but Nick Suzuki, I think, is a long shot for 2026 just because it's Canada. There's a lot of good players. It would make me so happy to know that Nick Suzuki is on that team, that they see him at that level, but he's fighting uphill against a lot. My question is, who is going to be some of your goaltenders there? And my biggest thought and my question for this is Samuel Montembeault, even as a third goaltender, not a starter, not the backup, just that third guy that maybe when you're going through some of those early group stages, maybe he's part of it. I think he's earned at least the opportunity. He performed well at Worlds. He's been playing pretty well in the NHL on a poor Habs team. I absolutely think that Samuel Montembeault should at least get a look in there. I'm not saying he's going to make it, but if there's anyone who's potentially could have earned that, I think it's going to be him for sure. I am very likely missing other people in here. There's a lot of potential prospects that could change. Things can change depending on the draft and depending on player growth and everything over the next couple of years. I want to know, who do you have making the 2026 Olympics? Tweet us at LO_Canadiens, LockedOnCanadiens@gmail.com in the YouTube comments. We're transitioning into our final segment of the show here. We're going to talk about who needs to step up in the second half of the season, especially with this lineup looking the way that it is. And we're going to get into that coming up next. And as I said off the top of the show, today's show is brought to you by Sleeper. And we know the Habs are slowly descending down the rankings and the standings and whatever have you here. But that doesn't mean you should miss out on potentially winning 100 times your cash by playing Sleeper Fantasy Hockey, the official daily fantasy app of Locked On NHL Network. And if hockey's not your thing, they have it for the NFL, the NBA, baseball starting soon, college football in the fall. And all you have to do is pick whether Sidney Crosby, McDavid, Nathan McKinnon will record more or less than their sleeper projections for things like goals, assists, saves, plus, minus, or more in a given game. And to win 100 times your bet on sleeper, you need to correctly predict the outcome of 8 player stats. That's it, Habs fans. You can win 100 times your money with daily fantasy hockey with Sleeper. So start paying attention and nail those picks so you can start winning big now. Use promo code LOCKEDONNHL and you'll get up to a $100 match on your first deposit. Terms and conditions apply. That's code LOCKEDONNHL. See Sleeper's terms of use for details and locational availability. We are back here for our final segment. And on Monday's show, we talked about, hey, who's been kind of flying under the radar and hasn't been getting the praise that they so deserve this season here. And we covered prospects and the players in the NHL, players in the AHL, and some prospects, the NCAA, in Europe, everywhere. Okay, that's, we've talked a lot about that, but I don't want to be negative because I want to frame the second half of the season as an opportunity more than a free fall. Basically, is that they can still lose games and gain valuable things throughout that in Montreal this season. And I think two of the biggest things that are standing out for players that this team desperately needs to step up. I look at Jake Allen and I think, okay, his first half wasn't terrible, but at the same time, you kind of like to see him maybe step up a little bit this season here. He has, in this season right now, 17 games played. He's 5-9-3, 901 save percentage, 343 goals against. It's not terrible. That's kind of in line where some of his Habs seasons have been at 907, 905. Last year was 891, but we know this team was objectively terrible in front of him. 901, he had a 905 of the Blues, 906, 920, 913, 905. If he stays around there, I think the biggest thing with Jake Allen that I want to see in the second half of the season is just the brain farts on little things. Because every now and then we see that he makes a bunch of great saves. He's dialed in, but then just a backbreaker from the post isn't sealed. He, doesn't catch it right. He's not prepared for an obvious shot. I shouldn't say blatant because that's not really what I mean by that, is that every now and then there's a mental lapse there. Montembeault has gotten a lot better. He's a little bit more reactive because he's got the frame for it. Jake Allen being a little bit more compact as a goaltender and a little bit older, maybe doesn't have the same reflex with that. In that if Jake Allen can come into the second half like right now and over the next handful of games, I don't want to say he has to steal them, but if he does, and I want people to hear me out on this, If Jake Allen steals a couple of games for the Montreal Canadiens coming up, games they should lose that would help them kind of drop down the standings a little bit, that's not a bad thing if it makes him the most appealing goaltender available at the trade deadline. Because going into the trade deadline, you have teams who are going to be desperate for goaltending. Edmonton, still not convinced that Calvin Pickard is the real answer there. You look at a team like Colorado, who is rotating through backup goaltenders right now behind Georgiev. They need something there. Toronto, who has needed a goaltender for 2 months now. You kind of wonder, okay, what opportunities do you have there? Even Carolina, who is kind of Frederik Andersen just got activated after, I believe it was a blood clotting issue here. There's the opportunity for Jake Allen to make himself an appealing and enticing option for a lot of these teams here. And because the Canadiens didn't retain money on Sean Monahan, thank you, Kent Hughes, if they need to retain part of Jake Allen's contract, they have a spot to do that. Their retention spots or some of their other deals come up in the offseason. They will get those back going into next season. They have the flexibility to make things happen with this. They can work with teams on this because they didn't retain any salary on Sean Monahan. One of the other big names is I want the best for Josh Anderson out of this. Is that he's got 7 goals and 6 assists right now. But he is a player struggling mightily. And the efforts have been there. He should probably have more goals than he does right now. He should be in the double-digit goals at the very least. He's done a lot of things that I look at this and I go, that is exactly what I want from him, but he doesn't get the payoff on it. And every time you grip the stick slightly tighter and slightly tighter and slightly tighter and slightly tighter, and then you're just misfiring, you're overthinking everything up here. I want to see the Josh Anderson where that goal scoring streak kind of started going into the holiday season there. Get yourself on track, and then maybe in the offseason when the cap is rising, teams go, okay, let's make a deal now. They need that depth scoring desperately now. You know your top line's decent with Slafkovsky, Caufield, and Suzuki. That's great. Who else on this team is scoring goals? Brendan Gallagher suspended for 5 games. He has 8 goals. Mike Matheson's a defenseman. He shouldn't be the one scoring all the goals. It is great that he is doing that, but you need more out of other players. And Josh Anderson is one of those players. I'd like to see more from Jesse Ylönen too, assuming Martin St. Louis wants to give him the ice time to do so. To transition over a little bit into the AHL, I'd like to see, maybe not, I don't have many complaints with the Rocket as they are right now. I'd like to see them get healthy is the biggest thing, because every time it seems like they get someone back, somebody else falls off. Nathan Legale should be back in the lineup soon. Sean Farrell should be back in the lineup soon. That's great. But I'd like to see more from some of the other guys on the team. Brandon Giniak's gone now. Lucas Condada's gone now. Your leading scorer's out. Joshua Waz had a very good season, but he's gone through the rookie ebbs and flows. When he's hot, he's unstoppable. When he is cold, he is struggling to get points on the board. That if Farrell is back, reunite him and Wah. I want to see Joshua Wah command the ice like he was at the beginning of the season. I have no reason to believe that he won't be able to do this. On defense, the veterans have been very good. Toby Pakap-Bisson has helped bring William Trudeau back to where he needs to be. So much so they were able to split that pairing up. One of them was with Justin Barron. One of them is with Logan Mailloux. But it's the back half of that defense there is that Olivier Galipeau, not a long-term solution. Matthias Norlinder looked great in the game I watched against Rochester on Friday night. Looked like the old player there, but he is still missing that next step there. The goaltending's been better. I'm just hoping that they can stay healthy and make that press run there. Because I know a lot of people are going to look at the record if they don't make the playoffs. They're going to think, oh, it's bad. They weren't a good team. This is a team that battled through injuries and everything. One of the best teams in the AHL for the month of January and the end of December there. A really, really good team. Who do you think should be stepping up? Again, you can tweet us at LO_Canadiens. You can send us emails at lockedoncanadiens@gmail.com. You can tweet myself at Scott Matla. Laura will be back for tomorrow's show. We will be recapping the Capitals game and catching up on so much else since we've been apart for a little bit here. I can't thank everybody enough for all that you do. Thank you for subscribing. Thank you for sharing our episodes, interacting with us, everything that goes along with that. When you're done checking us out, check out Locked On Sports Today, 24/7 stream of all of our local experts right on youtube.com. That's Locked On Sports Today. You might see my face pop up on there again. So please subscribe, tell all your friends, and folks, we will see you all next time.